share it.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Um, so Giselle, she was having internet issues, but she'll join us, and she is the dual enrollment coordinator for the Peralta Community Colleges. And also presenting today, we're really fortunate to have Dr. Mallory Stevens. She is a consultant with the Bay Area Community College Consortium, BACCC, as a pathway support consultant. And she'll introduce herself in a little bit before she gets started with her presentation. But first, I would just like to say that dual enrollment is a critical priority statewide and in our region. We know that access to college courses in high school increases student success and retention rates in college, specifically around African American and Latinx students. So in a lot of the work together, it's interesting, in a lot of the work together, we talk about, language, and language matters, so in much of what we see, we hear the term underrepresented. But I heard a term a couple of weeks ago describing students that we typically call underrepresented as historically excluded. And I was like, oh, interesting.
I like
And it went on to talk about how, students of color, Black, Latino, biracial, Asian American, Native American actually make up a majority of K-12 students in California. So if those students are still underrepresented in colleges, then it really provides an opportunity for us to make some differences. And so, which is why AB 288, College and Career Access Pathways, allows us to really focus on specific students that, typically are not just underrepresented, but have been historically excluded from higher education. I put a couple of links. I was going to put them in the chat, but as folks join us, the chat, they don't get to see. So I put some links in the agenda. Let me see if I can't share the agenda screen. And that way you'll be able to see exactly which links are there for you. And I know, Mallory, you'll be sharing your presentation and links to the BACC website as well. So there's a couple of documents that are going to be linked in the agenda. Bay Region Administrator Guidebook. A link to the website, which has tons more dual enrollment resources. Career Ladders Project has also done considerable work around dual enrollment. And a webinar they hosted, it's a couple of years old, but a lot of the information is still really relevant there. So those are in the agenda, and I'll drop the agenda one more time in the chat. Since we do have, okay, here's Giselle. Giselle's coming back. Okay, so I put that one more time in the, actually, I just sent that to you, Mallory. I'll send that again. Okay. So if we could reintroduce ourselves in the chat, and just name, title, and affiliation. That way we know who's joining us today. 12 Pathways Coordinator. Okay, and so really our goals of our time together are to, introduce you to Giselle, if you haven't met her yet, from Peralta Community College District, provide some resources specific to Peralta, but also an overview of dual enrollment in California and how we can really use this to leverage and change the outcomes for the students we are serving. Giselle, welcome back. I'm glad your internet's working. Before we jump into Mallory's presentation, Giselle, would you like to introduce yourself to the team if you haven't met them already?
Sure. I met Philip briefly at a Leadership Public Schools meeting about dual enrollment. Giselle Hendry, I am the Peralta Community College District dual enrollment coordinator this year. It's my first year doing it, so I'm learning as I go. I have a background in K-12. I was an elementary school principal for a few years and a high school principal for a few years, a college counselor for a decade or so. So I have a fair amount of experience, and I teach dual enrollment classes for College of Alameda. I teach in sociology at College of Alameda and Cal State East Bay. So that's me.
Excellent. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, so Mallory, I know you got the questions. Many people submitted some questions before our time together. And so hopefully you'll be able to incorporate some of those answers into your presentation. You do have access to share. So if you'd like to get started, go ahead.
Absolutely, I would love to get started. And so my goal in this presentation is to give you some things to think about as you're looking at expanding and making more robust your dual enrollment programs. Giselle is going to be the source of all good information about specific policies and procedures within your districts. And so I work for the Bay Area Community College Consortium. I am in charge of all things dual enrollment. And my goal is to support the expansion and high quality dual enrollment. When we talk about dual enrollment, we're really talking about any programs that allow students to both take high school and college courses at the same time. This is different than dual credit, which allows students to receive credit for a class at both high school and community college. And so it's really students in two academic programs or at two institutions. In community college parlance, we call this special part-time or special full-time. And some other important definitions to know, dual credit, again, because a course can be dual enrollment without being dual credit, but dual enrollment often is dual credit. When we talk about career technical education model curriculum standards, it's important for community college folk to understand how high school people are creating their pathway. When we're trying to staff dual enrollment, minimum qualifications are the requirements for to teach at the community college. And underrepresented student populations, and I really like Chris's term, that were
Historically excluded.
historically excluded. But the intent of the legislation is really to allow us to focus on a broader version of the population, believing that students who historically have not participated in dual enrollment could benefit as much or more than the students who are currently participating. So let's think a little bit about why we're focusing on dual enrollment, and it is a priority regionally and statewide. When you're looking at transition from high school to college, research has shown that students learn study skills and other habits related to college success. They learn how to play the part of a college student. Dual enrollment is related to, participation in dual enrollment is related to increased high school graduation rates and students who are more likely to enroll in college than students who were not participating in dual enrollment. In addition, once they get to college, they see a higher GPA, they have a higher persistence in a second year of college, and dual enrollment is positively related to credit accrual. Now, this could be because you've got courses that you're building up during high school, but also you're building relationships with your community college, learning how to leverage your community college counselors, and those students are more likely to complete a college degree. In terms of making an argument for expanding dual enrollment, CTE students specifically benefit from dual enrollment. Studies have shown that males and low-income students benefit more from dual enrollment than other subgroups. Also, studies have looked at low income, first generation, and otherwise disadvantaged students, that finding that they also saw all these benefits as much or more than other student groups. And so there's a lot of reasons for using dual enrollment and broadening our thinking about dual enrollment. So when we talk about who's in dual enrollment in California now, only 12.6% of California high school students are actually taking a college class while in high school. And if you look at the percentages of Latinx students and of African American students, they're benefiting less than the average. And the same with socioeconomically. SED, it tends to be free and reduced lunch. People who are students who have free and reduced lunch. And you can see that Asian students are the group that are most taking advantage of dual enrollment opportunities and are being given dual enrollment opportunities, and then white students. This was a study that came out really recently called A Leg Up on College, and super interesting. It is on my website. I'll link to it if you would like to read the whole study. So what do we need to do to really make this expansion a reality? The opportunity is that we can build really high quality dual enrollment programs that welcome and support a broader range of students. And Career Ladders Project, which is close to you guys in Oakland, did a white paper where they talked about the characteristics of high quality dual enrollment programs. And so I wanted to look at those qualities and talk to you a little bit about the opportunities and challenges that I see in each of those areas. Intersegmental and aligned across educational systems. So these programs, the most successful programs, are closely aligned partnerships. And if schools engage in pathway creation between high schools and community colleges, if they can create a clear connection for students to colleges and their programs, you can create higher quality CTE programs. I also think that we need to be focusing on increasing awareness in the K-8 schools as well, and supporting that increased awareness, because students need to be getting the math and science curriculum that they need in order to be prepared in high school for dual enrollment. So we need to start as early as possible. Some of the challenges we face here is fundamentally, we talk about a K-14 system, but the systems are misaligned in terms of their data, their policy, the curriculum, and also the credentialing of teachers. So typically, if a teacher is credentialed to teach in high school, they don't meet the minimum qualifications for community college. And if community college teachers are not credentialed in the high school programs. Career Ladders projects also identified that programs needed to be carefully structured and thoughtful and geared toward actually accomplishing a degree or a certificate or in a transfer pathway. And you see this reflected in our AB 288, and which is now AB 30 legislation. So the opportunity is that we can create a clear sequence of courses with intentional supports and move away from the random acts of dual enrollment that really are the characteristic of what was previously known as concurrent enrollment or individual dual enrollment. And we can make dual enrollment integrated into our high school planning and normalized with our high school populations. Some of the challenges we face here are that staff, faculty, and program capacities don't always allow for the development of dual enrollment relationships. The master schedule can be a nightmare. Often high schools are offering classes that in a way that is in conflict with how community college courses are offered. So you might have a high school that's offering Monday, Tuesday, or a block schedule that just doesn't fit into the community college normal schedule. And if you put teachers into not aligned, into blocks that aren't aligned with the community colleges, you're possibly precluding them from teaching 2 classes by having those misalignments. Availability of teaching units, the funding of teachers in the community college, particularly as our programs shrink, and we're seeing a real impact in COVID where programs are shrinking right now. And then also the program development process. On both sides, it tends to be a pretty long process. And you're also not typically engaging with your partners during that process. That's something I'd really like to see expanded. Another characteristic is student supports and work-based learning being integrated. So we have an opportunity to create holistic supports and create an early awareness of work-based learning for our students. The challenge is making supports available to high school students and the availability of work-based opportunities in conjunction with dual enrollment programs. One of the things that I think we really need to think about is that, I'm gonna make this just a little bit smaller. In terms of holistic supports, this is one of the upsides of COVID and our move to online learning. Both, and it hasn't been a smooth journey, but a lot of community college supports are now available online in a way that they never were before. And it's my deepest hope that we'll be able to leverage some of the learning that we've had during this time to really make our supports much more broadly available to students who may only be attending in classes on their high school campuses. So the final characteristic is driven by strong, committed partnerships among colleges, high schools, and other community institutions. We have an opportunity to create a dual enrollment culture with our students, with our parents, with our faculties and staffs. It requires long-term planning. It can lead to better system alignment, but staffing on both sides is one of the challenge. Having focused staff on both sides on dual enrollment as opposed to being additive to an already huge job, and also clear alignment to organizational priorities. I think that in order to get buy-in, it needs to meet the priorities of the organizations where you're working. So let's think a little bit about the details of how you start these partnerships. The first thing is, under the early college credit umbrella, we have a lot of tools at our disposal. We have dual enrollment. We also have articulation, which many of you may have been working on for years, and then also AP. And I just wanted to go over a little bit of what I see as the pros and cons of each of these forms of early college credit. AP is available in high schools, and it does give a grade bump on the transcript. Some of the cons are that it is less accessible to a broad range of students, not because of their ability to benefit from it or to be successful in it, but whether or not they feel welcome in the program or in that classroom. It is a high stakes test. It has a cost associated, which can be a barrier for students. Also AP credit, how colleges are recognizing that credit is shifting, and it doesn't allow for any communication with any collaboration with community colleges. In terms of articulation agreements, there's no risk to your college transcript. You can have flexibility with the scheduling, but students do not perceive it as much as a college class. It's a credit by exam model, which may be less transferable. And community colleges do not have receive any FTES for it. And that may lead to an unwillingness to engage with that. So dual enrollment, if we look at dual enrollment, and I'm talking about all forms of dual enrollment, You have improved long-term outcomes for students. You have a clear connection to a variety of college programs, and this is specifically with our CCAP agreements. And you have college experience for students. It does require focused administration, and low grades in those courses can really impact students' transcripts. And so you need to have supports to ensure that students are successful. And also you need to be monitoring and supporting them. So let's talk about CCAP. With CCAP, we're trying to broaden the reach of dual enrollment. CCAP, formerly, first it was AB 288, now it's AB 30. You can have a district-to-district agreement that is focused on students in underrepresented populations who are not already college or who are not already college bound. Now, this has to be a discussion in your partnership. You need to be really clear on which students you're trying to reach. And underrepresented can be women in STEM, or like you need to look for statistics, but you need to understand how you're defining underrepresented. And I also think there's some resistance with students who are not already college bound, thinking of them as not college material, where with appropriate supports, students can be very successful. So under AB 288 or AB 30, college courses need to be offered in a pathway. This could be a CTE pathway or a transfer pathway. Students will not pay for tuition, fees, or books. Who pays for those needs to be outlined in your college and career access pathway partnership agreement, but it will not be the student. And you can also have closed sections on your high school campus during the school day. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about the legislation. AB 30 came out in the last year, and it had many things that were the same, but it also tried to simplify some parts of what came out under AB 288. Instead of requiring a approval at two board meetings, so you had to introduce it at one and then have it approved at a second one, we can now get approval for CCAP agreements at a single board meeting. It also requires that you now gain input from your local workforce development boards, because we want to be creating dual enrollment in pathways that have demand in your region. And then SB 554 came out recently, and it allows us to offer dual enrollment or enroll adult school students who are enrolled in high school diploma or equivalency programs as dual enrollment students. And in the same way, they will have, they are able to take advantage of not paying for those classes. The other thing is that in terms of apportionment at the community college, the FTES, you get full apportionment for those students. And so there's a benefit, a financial benefit to the college as well. So when we talk about building a pathway, it can look many, many ways. You might start with an articulated class and then move into dual enrollment in fall and spring. You might have an intro class that supports students in developing skills within the pathway and then move into specific CTE courses over 1 or 2 years. You might have, at the end, have some kind of work experience that you offer to students. And again, it's whatever the partnership decides they can support. So what does it take to create a CCAP partnership? It takes a lot of conversations with a lot of the right people in the room. And so Career Ladders Project provides a framework that says that in order to create these partnerships, we need to have connection, which is not just K-12 schools and four-year institutions. It's actually connection to four-year institutions, employers, community organizations. This will help put input into the programs, what's needed. It will help you find students. Also, if you can create a pathway that has support all the way through to the 4 years, you'll get more transfer at the community college level. You also need to have intentional design. And the important part here, and the part that we are still working to develop as a state, are the scaffolded supports. And that includes multiple on-ramps and off-ramps into these programs. And then finally, sustainability. Dual enrollment has to be a long-term commitment, and it needs to be supported by internal structures. So as I develop dual enrollment programs, I'm always looking for ways to collaborate with my support people at the community college, and also to integrate dual enrollment process into our broader college processes. So I wanted to go through some of the questions that I ask, and this is over as you're creating the partnership. The first question is understanding how you're going to work together and why you're doing it. It's really important to be intentional. You want to understand both sides' missions and goals and how dual enrollment fits in those. Some of the goals could be to increase access to early college credit, to improve connection to CTE, improving your high school graduation rates, college and career readiness, just developing those skills, preparing for transfer, remedial skills. All of these are potential reasons people might undertake a dual enrollment partnership. You also need to think about how should we get together monthly, quarterly, essentially create a project plan for nurturing this dual enrollment partnership, and make sure that the people that are included in the conversation are across the board, because you're going to need buy-in, not just from your deans, but also from your student services, from your counseling departments, and from all levels at the high school as well, whoever's going to be involved. And so then once you have established what you're trying to do, you need to decide what courses you're going to offer and what supports are going to be needed. That's looking at the needs of the high school, where students are already developing knowledge, and what your goals are in terms of how you're going to support students. You're wanting to think of at least pairs of courses, because high school happens on an annual basis. So you don't want to create a dual enrollment class. You want to create a fall offering and a spring offering that work together in some intentional way. You cannot offer classes that are impacted at the community college. That's part of the legislation, because we do not want to limit access for existing students at the community college and impact their ability to graduate. You also need to be aware of what are the high school board policies. Many high schools preclude approval for dual enrollment classes if those classes are offered at the high school, for example. And you want to think about how you're going to connect students to supports. And that is both supports that are available to everyone, but if you have a course like digital media, where they need access to certain kinds of software, to specific tutoring, or to computers, you'll want a plan that also goes into discipline-specific supports. So the next set of questions: which students are the focus for each pathway, and who is being served? You need to look at the demographics of your high schools. what existing CTE pathways already are there in your high schools, and look critically if there are enough students to fill a section. What you don't want is to be creating a dual enrollment program where you have 10 students in the pathway, and then in the next course in the series, you only have 8. So be really clear when you're talking to your deans about creating pathways, how you're going to fill the pathway, and think of it as a funnel, because as you move deeper into it, some students will lose interest and will decide not to participate. And so if you start with too small of a group, it's not going to be sustainable. So then once you've decided what you're trying to do, you need to figure out how you're going to connect to students. And this is how you're going to market the program and how will you onboard students. High school counselors are really critical. They are your connection to the students that you want in this program. You can also look at what programs already exist in your high schools that might, and this could be CTE academies, it could be an Upward Bound program. You also need to look critically at what the prerequisites are for the pathways that you've created. Is there a way to collaborate with your feeder grade schools? If you want 9th and 10th graders, how can you ensure that more students are prepared coming in so they can enter those pathways? So now we're getting down into the nitty gritty, and it is complex every day as you go through this. So the next question is, when are you going to offer the course? When will it be taught? If it's during the school day, you're going to face master schedule issues. If it's after school, it might be an open section if it's not taught during the school day. You need to compare the high school and community college schedules. And it's not just start and end dates and when during the day. It's also, are your spring breaks in alignment? Do you have days off at the high school that you don't have at the community college? And particularly if you're embedding in the school day, you have to be really early and really intentional about how you're going to fit. Because with college classes, if there is something going on, a special event, and you're embedded in the school day, if there's something going on in the high school, you need to decide how you're going to handle that, because community college classes, you're required to have the right number of instructional minutes for students. You also need to have a conversation about who's going to teach the course. There's a lot of options. It could be a high school teacher who meets minimum qualifications. Remember that your dean and your college processes are always going to guide the approval of any instructor. If it's a community college instructor, you need to think about how you're going to support them working in the high school. Do they have the right temperament to work with high school students? It could be co-taught, which is a beautiful model where you have both the high school teacher and the community college teacher. The high school teacher is always with them and scaffolding the information and filling in. This often is really, again, if you can do it, and there are people that are doing this, it allows you to have both high school and high school teaching and community college teaching that work symbiotically. What that looks like in practice is you will have 2 classes. This will be a dual credit situation. And the high school teacher is assigning 1 grade for the high school work. The community college instructor is assigning a grade for the community college assignments. And what that ends up looking like is it could be you have an A in the high school class and a B in the community college class. It also gives you an option for students who decide to drop the community college piece. They can still stay in the high school class and not be impact their graduation requirements. So it, And then where will the course be taught? Right now, the answer is online. But if it's at the high school in a closed section, if it's at the community college, it's going to be an open section. If it's taught at the high school, do they have the right equipment? Does your teacher have access to the equipment? If you're bringing students from multiple schools, are you going to provide transportation? All this sort of thing. So that was a whole bunch of information about dual enrollment. I have links on this, and I've provided Dr. Morris with these slides, and these are links to some regional resources I've been developing. I'm always happy to answer questions. Do we have any questions now?
I'm going to, Mallory, I want to put those slides in a Google folder so I can post a link. So
I know it's a lot of information. It's a little bit like drinking out of a fire hydrant. Some of the questions that came up on our survey, one question was, how do you know if a course is CSU eligible? The courses that you're going to be offering as dual enrollment courses in a CCAP agreement will always be courses that are in the college catalog, and the college catalog will clearly outline whether or not courses are CSU or UC, and you do want to be focusing on transferable courses often. I also have people who have asked if you can work with non-credit. You can absolutely use dual enrollment for non-credit, but you are not building up credits that will give students momentum or lead toward a certificate or a degree. But if you find that you need to make a non-credit course a co-requisite in order to make sure that everybody has the same level of knowledge or has some specified supports, that might be a good use for non-credit. I think there's really, we have a lot of conversations that we need to have in order to expand dual enrollment. That includes, how do we leverage non-credit? How do we broaden who we are working with? And this could be continuation schools, students that are formerly incarcerated or in a juvenile program. It could be, how do we work with homeschools, charter schools? There's a lot of things to be figured out. And the good news and the bad news is that there's a lot of flexibility for what we can do.
One of the questions I've encountered these past couple of months has been around how a high school teacher, and a community college faculty member can both be teachers in the same course. And I believe this is the model in OUSD. I'm wondering if Fatima would be willing to speak to how OUSD accomplishes that particular task.
Hi, Giselle. Would you mind repeating the beginning part of your question?
The notion of a high school teacher and a Peralta Community College District faculty member both being teachers of record for the same course.
Got it. Also, just to introduce myself, I'm Fatima Gatala. I'm the dual enrollment specialist for Oakland Unified School District, and I work alongside Leslie Sue, who's the dual enrollment manager. So we've created the program that's about 5 years down now. We have about 45 courses each semester at all 15 high schools. And so for your question, Giselle, so if a high school teacher meets the minimum qualifications through Peralta, then we support them in the adjunct process, in which case they become a Peralta instructor as well, hired and paid by Peralta. And then they serve as the dual enrollment instructor for that dual enrollment course, while also being the OUSD teacher. I mean, in that specific hour and a half that they're teaching, they're paid by Peralta and they're a Peralta employee, but they have the added benefit of being familiar with our schools, with our students, and with the program. Giselle, were you asking about that, or were you asking more about the point people that are in the class?
So I
do you
guess
have a
it's
coach-
both,
Yeah.
because that piece, that particular teacher who is a Peralta employee while they're teaching the course does not, that is in addition to their teaching load as an OUSD teacher, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And then you also, another model that you employ in OUSD, and OUSD is sort of the Peralta Community College District flagship dual enrollment CCAP at this point, because of what Fatima just shared when she introduced herself. It is our largest and longest running, I guess, relationship around this work. And the CCAP with OUSD was developed, I believe, 2 years ago. So I guess, yes, if you could speak to that facilitator piece as another model, I think that would be helpful for folks as well.
Sure, yeah. And our MOU goes back more years. Leslie had worked on that with Peralta.
Fatima, your voice has disappeared.
I'm not muted. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Peralta goes back about 5+ years, but
Now it's gone again.
what's happening?
I think it might be a mic thing.
Oh, I hope it doesn't happen again.
There you are.
Okay, so the MOU goes back about 5 or 6 years, and Leslie Sue worked on that with Peralta, and that was our original legal foundation. And then you're correct, 2 years ago, as the AB changes happened with the state, then we made a CCAP agreement, and then we renewed it again this past year. So we revisit it to sort of tweak and make adjustments for the benefit of both institutions and students. And
do you have any dual credit classes where you have a co-teaching model in place, where you have both a community college instructor and a high school instructor in the same classroom?
Yeah, so part of our structure, and Giselle was referring to that too, is the 90% of what happens, because the adjunct process, although we love it and we are always looking for OUSD teachers who meet those minimum quals, and we can adjunct because it's just such a win-win situation. That happens maybe 5 to 10% of the time out of our 45 courses every semester. So what the majority of what happens is our model where the instructor, Peralta instructor, is there for the class, and then we have what we call a OUSD point person. Previously, we used to call it a teacher of record, but in reality, it doesn't have to be a credentialed teacher. It could be a counselor, it could be a pathway coach, it could be someone else who works at the school site. So we call it now the OUSD point person, and that person is not necessarily co-teaching, although that happens in some cases, but that person is a point person for both the instructor and the student. So, some of what you spoke to earlier in your presentation, where dual enrollment is a safe place for students to explore college, to kind of get their feet wet with the college experience. That point person can sometimes be that in between, because it's usually someone the student might recognize from the school site. And so sometimes when the students are shy to go to the instructor, they might go to that point person. So that point person can serve as in between. They're providing support. They're communicating with
being aware of ad drop dates, kind of keeping an eye on what's going on in the classroom.
Right. And when we are in person, they're also the instructors using their classroom space. So also things around projectors, or where are the pens for the classroom, or locking up afterwards. So
there's a fire drill, what happens?
Right. They provide a wraparound service if there's emergencies. Nice. In some cases, we have situations where there is a bit more of a co-teaching model that happens, and that comes out of especially for our instructors who return every semester and are matched up with the same OUSD point person. They, develop a relationship and end up sometimes co-teaching, especially for our media classes or things like, Photoshop and cameras and that sort of thing. It tends to happen more. But in terms of co-teaching formally, in terms of split pay, that hasn't happened yet. In terms of our point people are not paid by Peralta. They're paid by OUSD.
Are they stipended? Is that how it works?
It depends on each school site, because if it's, for example, if the dual enrollment class is after school, then yeah, it might be a stipend for that instructor. If it's happening, the more expensive model is when it's happening during the day and it's part of a OUSD teacher's load, because they're essentially getting paid for a class that they're not really teaching, they're just supporting.
Yeah.
So it depends on each school site, their budget, their relationship with dual enrollment, and we encourage them to land where they want with that, and how they negotiate the pay for that. But yeah, so it's either stipend or through the salary.
Some of the low hanging fruit is that high school counselors are the most likely to meet the minimum quals for counseling courses at the community college. So often if you're wanting an opening class, that's a class that teaches study skills and that sort of thing, the high school counselors meet the minimum quals, which is cool.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely something we're excited about. The only difficult part is our high school counselors are spread thin. They have a lot going on. So in terms of finding time and capacity during the school day to teach a course has been difficult. But you're correct that they meet the minimum quals, and we're excited to see if we can fit more counseling classes in. But there's other dynamics that also come up with Peralta around that. So
intentional staffing for dual enrollment on both sides of the equation is definitely one of the challenges.
Yeah, and one of the challenges that comes up for us a lot too is again stuff you spoke to in your presentation, but I find that sometimes Peralta instructors, in terms of their understanding of who our students are and what does it mean to teach high school and the benefits of teaching dual enrollment, in terms of you might not have students whose skill sets are way up there in high college, skill sets, but the angle of our program is exposure and support and breaking down barriers around who is a college student and who sees themselves as college students. And so sometimes you might have students who are not yet skilled, but that's part of the CCAP angle as well, as students who we want to recruit and enroll students who don't traditionally see themselves, because that's all related to systemic issues that we're trying to
address,
to go against, to break down. So in order to do that, we have to have a system that very bluntly pursues that and doesn't sort of bow down to, I think, false notions around like who is a college student or who should be in these classes.
And I think you can have the rigor and depth of a college class with appropriate supports. And on the community college campus, we have a lot of supports available to students. And they are college students and they are successful college students. So we really have to shift the culture away from believing that supports mean you aren't a real college student or you're not doing the work, because you are, and they are.
And
that's part of the conversation that we're having as dual enrollment faculty at the district. Just thinking through how do we navigate rigor and support in our classrooms so that we can offer a really substantive experience to this group of students that the CCAP is directly aiming to bring into this experience of college. So Fatima, that's something that we are talking about as dual enrollment faculty.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I know district-wise, we're definitely on the same page. And this goes beyond, college instructors. I'm a high school teacher, and this comes up in high school conversations.
In high school, especially with teachers in 11th and 12th grade.
Yeah, like what is rigor and what does it mean to scaffold? Because even at the high school level, some teachers think that means you're watering down curriculum, when really it's knowing your audience, and scaffolding is good teaching.
Yeah, absolutely.
Across K through 12, post-secondary. And so, not to say that this is a Peralta only issue, it's more just that how to keep pushing the conversation, and it's, I think, a healthy conversation to have, but it does come up, and to be really honest with your faculty, both at the high school and at any post-secondary institution, to have really sometimes uncomfortable conversations around what is rigor, what is good teaching, what is scaffolding, and how do we navigate that? So,
And you also, I think you are creating a stronger all-around teacher by supporting them in being a good dual enrollment instructor.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we send out a survey every semester and to the dual enrollment faculty. And the number one feedback we get is that teaching dual enrollment made me a better teacher. And the things I learned through teaching dual enrollment, I applied to my college.
Yeah, absolutely.
As well. So,
So,
yeah.
Areas.
Let me jump in real quick, Mallory, because I want to make sure. So in the last few minutes we have Giselle. So I know you've scheduled meetings, individuals with one-on-one folks. How would you like best, what would be the next steps if schools, districts, LEAs are wanting to reach out to you for support in getting a dual enrollment CCAP agreement going?
So I'm going to put my email in the chat. And the best thing to do is to really, did I spell my name correctly? Is to just reach out to me and set up a time for us to chat, because it really is an individual, what, to Mallory's point about intentionally setting having these conversations about strategically identifying pathways and identifying which students we're trying to serve and what classes might work for those students. Those are conversations that are very school specific. And so it really starts with connecting with me to set up a time where we can chat about what your vision is for your school and how that vision might fit with what we are currently offering and the areas that Peralta is trying to grow around dual enrollment. So it really starts with just connecting with me. Great. And we should see if other folks have questions. Thank you, Fatima. I know I just put you on the spot, but I appreciate you jumping in and answering that question.
Awesome.
Are there any other questions before we sign off?
Yeah, I had a question, and I think it may be just directed towards you, Giselle. My name is Adam Littlefield. I'm the principal at Piedmont High School, and we're just starting the dual enrollment process in our school district. I happen to have a teacher on my campus who is also a Peralta instructor, and it seems like that's the logical place to start in terms of creating that partnership.
Yeah.
Is it best to just connect with you and see what we might be able to do? I'm interested in seeing how that works at other schools, or so that I can look at how that might be introduced at our school. Yeah, definitely. Let's connect to talk more about that, because we don't have a CCAP in place, a college and career access pathways agreement in place with Piedmont right now, but that's something that we can start working on, and we can also sort of simultaneously think through what dual enrollment opportunities might be available as early as the spring. So definitely reach out to me, shoot me an email, and we'll set up a time to chat. Sounds good. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you too.
Hey, Danny, good to see you.
Good to see you, Chris and Giselle, and thank you for.
Hey, Danny.
Hi. So, I talked with both of you at different times earlier this year, and we're still moving forward with plans for expanding our dual enrollment offerings. I had two questions really connected. One is, what would be, if we're looking to have dual enrollment offerings during the summer, is there a set timeline that we should really be looking at to lock things in and figure that out so we can plan accordingly? And then the second question is, we're trying to increase mentorship opportunities and specifically support within our pathway and dual enrollment courses, and wondering if Peralta, one idea is to provide tutoring or support with dual enrollment coursework from perhaps Peralta students themselves. And just wondering if there's been any other examples of that.
So in terms of the summer timeline, Danny, I think that we want to be looking at, that early spring so that we can get things in place in time. So, or we could look at it now, I would say at the very latest, you want to be doing that in the early spring. And I really like that idea of mentorship and offering those opportunities to our current students. I don't know, again, I've only been doing this work with Peralta in this capacity anyway. I've been teaching with Peralta for many years, but so I don't actually know if there's a mentorship program in place, but I would love to chat more with you about that.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, because I was looking at how to provide that more individualized support and increase students in the dual enrollment courses as we expand as well.
Yeah, yeah. I know that for large courses, there is some funding available for embedded tutors for large courses, but beyond that, I'll have to do some research.
Okay, well, thank you.
Just I'll add a question before we wrap up. And Adam's question made me think of this. The deans assign the courses, correct? And they're based on, is it seniority? So is it true that Adam's teacher might not get the course, or how does that work when you have a seniority based kind of thing?
There are union contracts in place, right? And the high school campus requests the course, and they can request a teacher as well. In my experience at College of Alameda, because that's the campus that I teach from, we've had dual enrollment requests for courses, and sort of there is a seniority, might be the best way to say it. There are folks who have preferred status, and so they get sort of first dibs. But we also want to create relationships with the high schools as well. And so if I've been teaching at a particular high school, if that high school requests me, there's a good chance that I will get that course, unless the person who has preferred status over me wants the course, then they have sort of first dibs. So there's a little bit of that's based on the union contract with the with the faculty at Peralta. But one of our intentions as we develop these relationships is to have our faculty develop relationships with high school campuses. And so we don't want you to be switching out faculty. If you got a social problems class with Professor Harris, you want every time that social problems class is run, it would be good for Professor Harris to teach it, right? So we want to develop that to the best of our ability within the constraints of the union contract.
Excellent. Awesome. Alrighty, I put links to everything on the agenda, and I'll send out a recap and a link to the recording. I'll upload it to YouTube, or make however we have to do it. I don't know.